we had to find a new co-packer. And so I went through that whole process of like Google, right? Co-packer for
Yeah.
nuts or whatever. So I ended up finding this really awesome place in Michigan. And so did some research on them, ended up going up there, watching a production run. And they actually helped with some of the messaging on the package, because as they were making it, they were telling me like, man, this stuff smells magical. And so we ended up using the word magical on the packaging. So it was just really cool to have all those pieces connect.
This is Evolve CPG, a community of purpose-driven brand leaders who not only believe in better, but actively pursue it. That's better products, better brands, and better leadership for a better world. You can join our online community right now, where we're going further, faster together at community.evolvecpg.com. Join us. I'm your host, Gage Mitchell, founder and creative director of Modern Species, a sustainable brand design agency helping better brands grow and scale their impact. On this episode, we're speaking with Kate Fosson, co-founder and CEO of Brand Pollinators, about the experiences and knowledge we collect along our journey and how she's using her unique combination of skill sets to help brands scale sustainably.
So my name is Kate Fosson, and I am co-founder at Brand Pollinators. We work with emerging purpose-driven brands, providing foundational marketing support. And we're also building a community of all these founders that we've talked to kind of help them help each other, and all kind of rise together.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me, Kate. I'm super excited to chat with you a bit more. I know we've been like swapping some emails and notes and having little conversations back and forth. So I'm excited to dig a little bit more into your background and kind of how you're helping people at Brand Pollinators. But before we dive super deep into Brand Pollinators, I was digging around in your history and noticed you have a background in various things like web design and operations and brand management. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into like things like web design or operations, which feel like kind of different animals to begin with, but life takes us on weird journeys. But how did you kind of get started down your path?
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting meandering path, I'll say. I think a lot of it is because when I married my husband, he is active duty military. And so I was sort of kind of forced into more of an entrepreneurial mindset, because we move every 2 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
it
Yeah.
makes it really challenging to maintain a consistent career. Obviously, with one company, over several moves, we've moved probably 8 times, 9 times now. And so
Nice. Wow.
that's, yeah,
You're
it's a
pros
challenge.
now, I guess. You just
Sort of.
keep everything in boxes until you need it, pull it out, put it back in a box just in case.
Yeah, and I think it actually might get harder the more we do it. It seems like every
Oh,
time it's becoming more complicated. So
more complicated, or just like you have less energy for it because you're just tired of moving?
yeah, I actually really enjoy moving. It's been really fun to just check out new places and kind of try to become a local wherever we go. I got
Yeah.
involved when we lived in South Carolina. I got involved in like local government, and
Oh,
it's
nice.
doing a lot of volunteering there. And it's just, every place is different, and so it's fun to kind of go and just sort of explore and learn about a different place.
Yeah, learn about the different places. I love that so much too. That's part of why I've moved a decent bit. Is I just love checking out new cities, seeing what they have to offer, trying all the new restaurants, and meeting a new group of friends. What's also kind of interesting, which has never been my main point, but you also get to like slightly reinvent yourself a little bit each time you move, because you can just introduce yourself in a different way to new people, and then they have different expectations. Like you said, you could join a local government, or like help participate or volunteer with your professional association, or do so many different things. And it's kind of nice not to have all the baggage of everything you've been to people and in past places, and you can just kind of like start afresh a little bit each time, which is also nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And it brings back to the point of like doing web design and operations, because at each location, sometimes I just sort of had to figure out something to work on while I was there. When we lived in Monterey, California, we were there for 18 months and I had just finished my MBA. And so I started looking for work, and I knew, it wasn't panning out immediately. And I knew, oh man, by the time I find something, I'm just going to have to put in my notice. So
Oh
I
yeah.
ended up getting really into like professional development. Like I did Toastmasters,
Cool.
and
Oh,
I
nice.
was working a lot. Yeah. So just kind of like building my own personal brand and doing some professional development during that time. And then when we moved again, I was able to work with a company. And so each time it's a little bit different, but yeah, the very first job that I branched out from the traditional career path was I decided to become a web designer, because I just thought, well, it's something I could do from anywhere. So I started that back in 2008. So I've basically been working remotely for that long.
Wow, nice. I mean, I sort of got into design for similar reasons. I just thought I love business and I love creativity. And through design, graphic design, whatever type of design you do, web design, whatever, you can kind of combine multiple interests together and have flexibility to kind of go wherever, work for lots of different companies. Like you can work in an agency, you can work in house, you can be a freelancer. Like there's just so many more options, I think, with this design career path than there are with some that are a little bit more rigid. So that's
Yeah,
cool
and
that
you
you
know what
got
I
into it that
realized
way.
too is like with web design, I'm like a really organized person. I mean, don't look at my desk, but I'm really organized in the sense that I can organize information as I'm listening to it. And, like everyone in my MBA class was like, "Can I get your notes after this?" Because I just kind of see things in a hierarchy when I'm hearing them, and so that really played well into the design, like the web design. And at first I didn't really think that having that a skill, I didn't even really consider it a skill. I didn't just think it was very valuable, but it turns out that a lot of people don't think like that, and it's really useful to be able to have that.
Totally. That's very powerful. I feel like, there's so many design principles, but I've often thought, like more recently, that if you could only learn one design principle, it would have to be hierarchy, probably, because that's kind of the whole point. It's like, are you guiding people to the information they need when they need it in the right order, et cetera? And that's all about hierarchy, whether that's type size or color contrast or white space or like all these other things that go into design. It's all kind of comes back to hierarchy. Like, are you communicating properly? So I can totally see how
Absolutely.
being a great note taker, an organized thinker as well, makes a lot of sense. I think for me too, one of the things that I didn't realize was sort of an advantage, and it's sort of a disadvantage as well, is that I have a little bit of a struggle like reading instructions or complicated documents like government document. Maybe a lot of people have that problem, but for me, when I read those things, I can read one question five different ways and think about like a bunch of different ways to answer it. So it's kind of like this, the benefit is that I come to like all the problems that we're trying to solve through modern species from like a very open mind lens of like there's not just one solution, there's probably 300 different solutions. But to tie it back into the hierarchy, what I've more recently realized is that because I can see all the different ways that somebody could get tripped up when reading something, I think that gives me an extra perspective to try to help make it clearer. Because if I can remove a couple of those hurdles for people who might be dyslexic or might have a hard time processing information or might read this word to mean something else, or if the hyphen's in the wrong spot, it could communicate something differently. Like I've started realizing
100%.
that that's like
Yeah.
one of my unique skill sets too, and I just have to figure out where to apply that. But it is kind of fun how we just like bring our personality quirks into our career in a way that even if whether it's a strength or a weakness, it just kind of like helps you come at your job from a different perspective, which is great.
Yeah, for sure. My co-founder and I, Channing, we were having this conversation one day because I kept using the word biweekly, And she kept changing it to bi-monthly. And I was like, no, but we want it to be every other week. And she's like, I know. I'm like, but bi-weekly means every other week. And she's like, no, bi-weekly means twice a week. And I was like, wait, what? And I put this poll out on LinkedIn, and it was like literally a 50-50 split whether people thought it meant one thing or the other. So it's true, like, people can interpret things in different ways. So it's important to pay attention to that.
Yeah, for sure. I always get caught up on common phrases like, oh, stop on a dime or whatever. Like anytime somebody says something that doesn't make quick logical sense in today's context, my brain is always like, wait, hold on. Where did that phrase even come from? And what does it even mean? Are we even using it in the right way? And like, I just get caught up in those phrases and going and like spinning in circles in my mind for a little while. But yeah, there are so many colloquialisms that we use that make sense to us. But when you're a national brand or building a website or whatever, the chances are that that's going to be confusing to someone else. So I think having the mindset that catches those kind of things is helpful for our clients. Okay, so that makes sense for how you got into web design, but where did the operations side come in?
The organization piece. I mean, I think that every good operations person is super organized and probably hopefully loves spreadsheets. And I think
Yeah.
that that's kind of where that evolved for me, is that I was actually doing web design and development. I just figured, most small businesses need the development too, not just the design. And so I learned how to develop, I learned how to code, and I started building sites for people. And I was pretty busy. I mean, completely just word of mouth. I wasn't doing any marketing, but everybody needed a website, and the skills of designing and developing a website were not something everybody could do. There wasn't a lot of those drag and drop options like there are now, back, however many years ago that was. And so, I kind of figured it all out on my own. And one of the clients that I was working with, she recognized, that organizational mindset that I had and the technical skills that I developed. And so after I created the website, she and her partner split, and she came back to me and said, my partner was the technical one. I really need some help. Can you help support me? And so I
Nice.
joined. That was the company is called Military One Click, and it was a web-based company providing resources for military families. And so Jen Pilcher, the founder, brought me in, and I started out by helping her with the newsletter and updating the website. And it was, really website intensive, tech intensive, because it was a web-based company. But I learned a lot in the process, and I think generally appreciated the organizational skills that I brought to the table. And so eventually ended up becoming the chief operating officer for the company. And after that, I was able to kind of make a lot more connections in that sort of capacity. And so I ended up going later down the road. I decided I would go to do my MBA, because it was just like so fun for me to learn how the business operated and what happened behind the scenes, and how to coordinate, the people and the materials and all of that stuff. So that was kind of the process of evolution for going from design to operations.
Gotcha. And you went to get back to school to get your MBA, which I've thought about often, but just never pulled the trigger on. And I've gotten mixed advice from people. Some people say, oh, yeah, it's amazing. Like, just pick the right school with the right kind of program that you're interested in. Other people say, you know what, it's mostly there for the connections you make during school. And if you've already been running a business, it might not be worth the money that you spend on it, and so on and so forth. So I'm curious, how much business experience did you have before the MBA? And what did you think was the most rewarding part of going back for that degree?
That's a good question. I think when I was starting the MBA, it was probably 10 years after I had finished my undergrad. And so throughout that time, I had a couple different careers. and, gone from I was originally a buyer for a wholesale grocer. And then I had some other jobs before I met my husband. And then, that's when I started to do the design work, and then the operations. And so I had the entrepreneurial experience, and I had
Hmm.
also worked for some really big companies. So I had kind of a broad background, but I wouldn't say I was on a specific trajectory of what I wanted to do going forward after the MBA. And I think that made it less valuable because, I was there learning a lot, but I wasn't really able to apply it to anything specific.
Okay.
And so, I really enjoyed my time. I did a part-time program, which I had 2 kids during my MBA time, which was only 27 months.
You just decided to make it more difficult. Yeah.
I made it as challenging as possible. And, but the cool thing about the part-time program, it was done through American University, the Kogod School of Business in DC. And we had maybe 25, 30 people in our cohort. And we just progressed through the whole program as a cohort together the whole time, one class at a time.
Nice.
And that was a really cool format because we came to be really close. And so, we got to know each other really well, and we got to, spend a lot of time together, and kind of tapping into each other when we needed support in a certain area that someone else had expertise in. So I think that was really cool. We obviously had some really amazing professors there as well. I love learning. I love
Yeah.
school. So I definitely plan to continue doing school. I'll probably do a PhD at some point.
Oh, nice.
So I'm always an advocate for it, but it's definitely not for everybody. And I think it helps if you have more of a specific goal in mind of what you want to do when you finish the program.
That makes sense. Yeah. Because I think, maybe all programs are different, but I think often when you're in an MBA program, you're meant to be actually like working out like a business plan, or working on some sort of project and trying to launch it and get feedback and whatever. So it gives you more context. I think, but
Yeah, and
programs might
my
be different. So.
Yeah, and my goal was to, I did want to be a consultant. But everybody in business school is like, oh, consultant, you're going to work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You're going to be traveling all the time. And I mean,
And that's
I was
different
like
from being an
pregnant. I was
entrepreneur.
like,
Sorry.
yeah, I was like, that's not exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that it just because a business consultant doesn't mean you have to work at Bain, or
Yeah.
you don't have to work at BCG. It's just, you can still be a consultant and do it on a different scale than one of these gigantic consulting firms.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, because that's totally the opposite of why I would go for an MBA, which I think maybe that's the reason why a lot of folks do, is because they it's required for roles or certain roles in certain companies. So like the bigger the company, maybe the more likely it's required that you need to have a master's degree to kind of stand out or even be qualified for a job. Whereas if you're working with smaller companies or doing your own thing, there's no requirement. You don't even need a high school degree to launch like a successful company. Like look at Mike Feta from founder of Manitoba Harvest. He's always talking about the fact that he dropped out of school at 13 to go down his entrepreneurial journey. Not that I would recommend that for everyone, but it worked out for him. And in fact, I think I've looked
Yeah,
at
exactly.
lists of CEOs of big companies and which ones have MBAs and which ones don't. And usually the founder doesn't. It's usually like the CEO that comes in after the founder that does have one, which, maybe means they're a better CEO afterwards than the founder. But anyway, long story short, I think there's a lot of different reasons to get an MBA. For me, I've just always been curious in the education, and like my favorite book topic is like business, are like business books, psychology books, things like that. So I'm just always consuming information about business models or business strategies or marketing strategies. So I've always thought going back for an MBA would be great, and I love the Stanford program when I've looked into it, because it's kind of social impact focused as compared to like some other programs that seem more go work in a big corporate consultancy kind of focus. But with that said, it's like a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and will it benefit me? Like, I think in my current life, it would probably add little to no value because I'm not trying to go get a job where I need a degree. And I've been running my business for 13 years already. So would it be mind blowing enough to justify the cost? I don't know, but I'm just intellectually curious. I kind of want to go do the program just for fun. So I'm just going to put it
Yeah,
on
for
that
sure.
bucket list of like someday when I've got the spare 100 grand in a couple of years, I'll just go do it
Yeah,
for
just
fun.
audit it in your free
Yeah,
time.
totally. Well, anyway, thanks for going down that rabbit hole a little bit with me. But that brings us to a little bit more current times where you also have an experience with brand management. So was that like post MBA that you got into brand management?
Yeah, for sure. I was working, let's see, so I was living in South Carolina and I came across this brand that was nearby. It was like this CPG brand that was located about 40 minutes from my house. And they were looking for somebody they were asking for like a marketing person. And I looked at the job description and I was like, you need a lot more than a marketing person. And I could tell by the job description that it was, a fast growing company, but like a small team and other things. I was familiar with a lot of things that it was going to take to help grow that business. And so I just went into the office and I told her it's Jenny from Greenjoy. I looked at the job description. I said, I can definitely help you with all of these things. It's not really like a marketing associate or whatever title you have on here, but yeah, I can come in as like a director and help with a lot of these things. And so she agreed to it and gave me a chance there. And so
Nice.
I spent I think it was a year and a half maybe working with Greenjoy, and it was just such a great learning experience helping develop the brand. And I learned so much about CPG, which I didn't have a ton of experience before that. I had worked as a grocery buyer before, but I was on the broker side. And so being, in product development was really interesting. So I got to, figure out like co-packing and
Yeah.
creating packaging and all that kind of stuff. And then of course that's where I ended up meeting Channing as well. So all in all, it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, very cool. And it's funny, like, while none of these steps in your path were necessarily strategically planned out this way, that combination of experience of web design operations, getting your MBA, doing brand management operation, like all those kind of product development, etc., led you to a place where you're like perfectly suited to be consulting with CPG companies. It's
Hmm.
like perfectly lined up that way, which is again why I love meandering career paths that like people just follow their interests or follow their passions or chase up or like welcome opportunities that just show up because you end up creating this like unique set of expertise that you wouldn't have been able to design if you had tried. So that's
Yeah.
cool. And you mentioned Greenjoy. Did you have while you were there? Did you have any like big wins or difficult hurdles or anything that you could share with us?
I mean, there's definitely a lot of difficult hurdles, but there were some fun things that we accomplished too. And I guess probably two of my favorite things. One of them was redesigning the package for the toppers product. It was like a nut mix that was intended to be a salad topper. And it was so delicious. I mean, talk about like eating your own supply. Like we were always snacking on it all the time. And it was such an awesome product. And so it was like very exciting to be able to evangelize that. So I actually mocked up the packaging myself, using my web design background. And I'll have to have you look it over for me and get your professional opinion on it. But it was really fun, and I learned so much about all the different packaging materials and just kind of exploring the the wording, the messaging that goes on the package. So that was really cool. And then to like see it on shelves was very exciting.
Yeah,
And then the
that's the
other
best
piece
part.
was also, yeah, for sure. The other piece was also with the Toppers product, we had to find a new co-packer. And so I went through that whole process of like Google, right? Co-packer for
Yeah.
nuts or whatever. So I ended up finding this really awesome place in Michigan. And so did some research on them, ended up going up there, watching a production run, and they actually helped with some of the messaging on the package because as they were making it, they were telling me like, man, this stuff smells magical. And so we ended up using the word magical on the packaging. So it was just really cool to have all those pieces connect because probably in a bigger company, the person that's designing the package isn't the same person that's on the production run floor, taste testing the product as it comes off the line. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of why I like smaller, like keeping my studio agency kind of smaller, and also why I love the magic that happens in smaller teams is because, yeah, it's stressful and difficult to wear a bunch of different hats, but I feel like you learn so much more and can do your core job better when you've had experience with other people's roles, right? Like if you're a graphic designer, let's say, but you've never prepped anything for print or never been on press or anything like that, you're not going to have the same knowledge you would have to set up files properly or even come up with creative solutions that will save the client money or reduced environmental impact or whatever, by making just smarter choices because you know the production side of things, right?
yeah,
But
it's
same
funny
same
too.
goes all up and down. Like if you don't know where ingredients come from and so on and so forth, you're probably not going to be as good at designing a product. If you don't know how distribution works or brokers work or retail works, then you're probably going to end up creating a product that maybe is really difficult with a short shelf life and hard to ship around the country and really expensive because you put it in a glass bottle, like whatever. There's just so many things that if you know more of the business, you'll make smarter decisions.
Yeah, for sure. Wait, when I was in college, I actually worked in the print shop burning plates for the
Of
printing
course you
press.
did.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that kind of helped me understand, the color, the color schemes and that whole process of printing. I mean, I didn't print on plastic or pouches or anything, but I mean, I helped out the binder, like I
But
was a
you knew what
binder.
a plate was, and that's like
Mm-hmm.
above like what a lot of people know when they first get into, creating packaging or whatever. So that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So a lot of great experiences and digging in with Greenjoy to put all the puzzle pieces together. Noticed also that you've been a SCORE mentor, which I'm not sure if everyone listening knows what SCORE is, but it's that program through the Small Business Association where you can get, I think it's always free, but maybe sometimes
Yeah.
there's a fee, but always free. Okay. So it's a free program where you can get business advisors that can help you through some challenges you're facing as a small business. But can you talk a little bit more about being a SCORE mentor? I've never even thought to like go do something like that? Is it for MBAs only? Is it just experienced entrepreneurs? And I always thought it was more like retired people, but obviously you weren't retired when you were doing it.
I was about to say that. I kind of like to just pretend like I'm retired, and I feel like that works really well for me. But
Nice.
no, it was funny because I vividly remember the day I walked into the office because I thought, I wanted to do consulting, and I thought, oh, this is so cool because it's a program that would help all these local businesses, and they probably don't have access to. This was in South Carolina, like a small coastal town, like they probably don't have access to a lot of like MBA mentors. And so I looked at the SCORE program. I thought, I think I could add something here. So I went to the office and I saw the poster on the wall. It was like an old logo, and it used to be an acronym for something retired executives. And so then when I saw that, I was like, oh no, this is not me. But I ended up chatting with the person that interviewed me, and of course he was retired executive, but he was really interested to talk with people who were younger, and had different backgrounds, because a retired executive, I mean, they're coming at it from one angle, I think, and it's just so valuable for entrepreneurs to be able to connect with people who have been there before, have been entrepreneurs, have, gotten their hands dirty, had different roles. And I think that they really wanted to kind of diversify that pool of mentors that were available to people. So
Nice.
they allowed me to join in. It's a volunteer program, and all of the support is free for entrepreneurs. But they have chapters all around the country. Anybody can reach out and get connected with a mentor. I highly recommend it, especially if you're early on in your journey, because it's some invaluable advice, especially when it comes to building a business plan or just kind of considering some of the options. And I remember one of my coaches with that program, John Farrar. He's a great guy. He mentors like hundreds of people every year, and he would always remind me, we're not here to like make sure people's businesses are successful. We're here to make sure that they get the support they need and they get the information they need to make choices about their business. And so
Interesting.
sometimes, you might have to give them some hard advice about this might not actually be the right market, or this might not be the right kind of time or packaging or whatever it is. But that was really important for me to hear too, because a lot of those companies were early stage. And I mean, you don't want to really invest too much in your business in the very beginning if you haven't really gotten positive feedback about it being the right thing at the right time in the right place. So
Yeah.
I thought that was really helpful too.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the hard answers that people need earlier on that they often don't get. Because, when you're, let's just say a CPG company, and you're going around being like, oh, taste my amazing product that I made at home. And everyone, of course, is super encouraging and be like, oh my God, this is so good. You should probably start a company. And like, that sounds amazing. And everyone often, or not everyone, but a lot of people dream of having their own company, right? But you're not thinking about all the struggles and all the financial um, requirements and stress and everything that's going to go along with it. Not to mention, I just saw Midday Squares. One of the founders posted up today saying 3 or however many years into the business, he just took his first paycheck. So it's
Yeah.
just like people aren't thinking about that when they're like, oh, this is a good homemade cookie or whatever, and I should go sell those. It's just so complicated. So sometimes like just getting the raw truth up front is what people need to hear. Like it may not be what they want to hear, but it's what they need to hear. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
one of my recent guests, Douglas, he wrote a book just recently called "So You Wanna," and I think it's like start a food or beverage business. And he decided to approach the book all from a kind of a cautionary tale kind of standpoint. So he has like a choose your own adventure. You can pick of up to like one of like 5 different entrepreneurs that sound more like you, and it's like a combination of like you have experience or you don't have experience, or you have money or you don't have money, or whatever, however you're coming at it. But you can read kind of the difficulty of launching and growing a CPG business from those different perspectives, so that you just have more of that knowledge when you're starting the business and you're coming to it with um, a more realistic understanding of what it's going to take than just like oh, people like my cookie, I'll just put it in a bag and next thing you know, I'll sell my business for $100 million. It doesn't necessarily happen like that.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when we were at Green Joy, the packaging and the shipping was always a problem, because the first products they had were a glass bottle with it was refrigerated salad dressing.
Yeah.
And it's just such a pain to figure out the shipping for that. And of course, we were trying to do things that were, conscientious. We didn't want to be just, spending a bunch on shipping, but also we were looking at like the mushroom packaging and reusable coolers, and like, how could we do this in a way that was more environmentally friendly too? And it's just extremely expensive. And, if you pick the most expensive bottle, and the shipping is going to be through the roof, and all these factors come into play, then the price of your product is going to have to be super high to be able to compensate for that. And are people going to pay that? Probably not.
Yeah, totally. And those are the kind of things that I think a lot of entrepreneurs starting out in the CPG space, they just don't have any of that context up front, which I saw a stat just recently that said like 15% of CPG brands survive the first couple of years. So it's a low survival rate. I don't know how that compares to other industries. Like maybe it's even worse in restaurants or something, but it's a low survival rate. And I imagine it's mostly because people don't know any of this stuff when they start out in their business. So they do pick a really difficult product to manufacture, or they pick a really expensive ingredient, or they pick a packaging type, or they end up at a price point, or they go too big too fast, or there's just so many different ways that you can fail in this industry. And just whether it's through SCORE or that So You Want a Book that I just mentioned or whatever, I think entrepreneurs should get some of the real facts first, and maybe prototype a few different products before going all in and launching something at a regional or even national scale. Because maybe that product's not the one you should scale with. Like maybe that's the thing that you can sell locally to your biggest fans, but the thing that you want to scale with maybe should be a little more shelf stable, maybe should be easier to ship, maybe should be a lower cost entry point for people to like find your brand and try it, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So that brings us to like more current times, though, where you're continuing to help support entrepreneurs and CPG brands and other folks through Brand Pollinators. So how did Brand Pollinators come to be, and how are you helping purpose-driven brands?
Jenny and I actually started Brand Pollinators after leaving Greenjoy, and I ended up leaving because we moved. Of course, we moved again, and so wasn't
Yeah.
local anymore. But then I kept in touch. She stayed, and I kept in touch with her. We talked regularly, and we kept this idea. I mean, the first time we met, we knew we were going to work together. Like, I was drawing hearts in my notebook, and I was like, this is like my. She calls it, we were entrepreneurial soulmates. We just
Yeah.
knew we were going to work together, and so we kind of kept in touch, and we kept thinking about different ideas of how we could support brands, because that was our main goal, was how can we help more than just one brand? Because the two of us working together at Greenjoy, I felt like we were able to do a lot together. We worked really well together, but it's all being like one company. And so we thought, man, if we could combine forces and try to provide more support to more companies and focus specifically on purpose-driven companies that are doing things in an eco-friendly, socially conscious way, like it would be so perfect. And so we kept thinking about it, and we finally came up with the name Brand Pollinators, and it was so perfect for what we wanted to do, because we definitely wanted to work with brands, and we felt that the collaboration between brands is what really helps the most, and the connections
Yeah.
that founders get with other founders and other businesses can really make or break the company. And so we started to develop some consulting services for emerging brands. And she has a ton of background in CPG. She's worked for several companies, and she has this like CPG brain, and she's always following the trends and keeping on top of everything. So she had that coming into it, and working in sales and in marketing. And then I had the operations, brand management, and they really converged on marketing, like specifically foundational marketing. And we had seen in all the companies that we'd work with and the entrepreneurs that we'd mentored, is that so many people kind of overlook those foundational elements from the beginning, and then as they grow, it's just so complicated to unwind back from that and try to create a solid strategy without having that foundation. And so that was kind of our focus was, okay, we want to help people gain some clarity around their mission and vision, who their target audience is, what they're all about, so that they can, kind of build this launch pad for future success.
Beautiful. Yeah, that is so powerful. As we mentioned multiple times in the conversation, like not knowing what you're doing or where you're going can make the road very difficult, right? So giving people some of that foundational knowledge is super helpful. And I know that you have this kind of community network going on. Can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. We talked about the community with you a while back because it's something that's just, it's so important to be able to connect people together. And it's like, what's the best format for this? So I know you've got like a mighty network where people are able to go and talk to each other, which is amazing. We explored mighty networks a while back, and we really, we tried a bunch of different things. And I think where we've landed now with our community is that we're sending out an email every week to everybody who's in our community. It's open to anybody, but we also make sure that it gives us a chance to make sure that everybody is getting value, and that we're not spamming people with unnecessary unrequested information. So we have the email that goes out every Sunday, and we've been getting some amazing feedback on that. We usually provide some kind of tips, resources, connections for people, upcoming awards, like you name it. And then we do a monthly community call where we usually have a guest expert, and that's open to anybody to ask questions. And those have been really fun. We've been able to talk to people about B Corps, and from B Corps to SEO to logistics. I mean, you name it, we've covered those as well. So that's been really cool. And then kind of the place where the community exists is with us, with Channing and I. And we don't have a platform where people can go and communicate because, there's so many out there, and we definitely don't want to be competing with, the ones that are doing well. We don't want to make people create, another login somewhere. And so
Yeah.
it's just kind of, it's like we're taking people under our wing and making individual connections for people. And some of our community members have said we're sort of like the faster thing than Googling. Like you send us a message
Nice.
and we'll track down the answer for you. That's
Oh,
a
that's really
specific
cool. Yeah.
answer for you. It's not like you have to go hunting. Like you just say what you need and we'll track it down.
Nice. That's great. Yeah, I think, like you said, there's a lot of communities out there, whether it's just like forums or Slack channels, or in my case, our case, Mighty Network kind of communities, and then there's more of like the event style communities, whether it's online stuff like what you're doing, or even in person, like Positively Network. Um, Not Positively, Naturally
Naturally
Network.
network. Yeah.
Um, that they started, in the Boulder area, but now they're kind of expanding to a lot of different cities. But there's all these different kind of communities to plug into, and I'm always more of on the collaborative side of like rising tide lifts all boats. Let's all just help each other and interconnect and do more work together. But at the same time, I just saw um, Zach from Rodeo CPG posting up like, here's the 5 main communities I've found for the CPG space. Why aren't there more? And I was thinking like, do we need more? But like to his point, like in most other industries, there's like 30 different Reddit channels just for that one industry, etc. And there's like not that much for CPG entrepreneurs or marketers or brand people. There's not that many options for communities, and maybe some of them are harder to like find. Like ours is pretty open right now, you can just pop in and kind of see what's going on before even joining, but some of them you have to like sign up for to even like know what's kind of behind there. So where do or how do these people with burning CPG questions, where do they go to get answers? So in my mind, it would be good if we're like all these communities just work together and point towards each other and say, oh, you need that kind of thing? Go over to Startup CPG. They've got this awesome program going on. Oh, you need that thing? Check Indie CPG. They've got some awesome stuff going on. Or like go to Brand Pollinators or whatever. But kind of creating an interconnected web would make it all that much more powerful, so that if a CPG entrepreneur or whatever finds one resource, then they can get connected to the rest of them. So
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of my not so secret agenda that I'm kind of working to do, is I think it would be cool if we could all find ways to connect together and share resources and just build a better community, so that, like, in my mind, CPG space is one of the best places to make an impact, because everyone out there is eating or using personal care products or whatever. Like, that's kind of a mandatory, like everyone's going to be continuing to buy that stuff. And there's just such a huge impact, environmental impact, social impact, et cetera, to doing it the right way, that if we can help these better for the world CPG brands grow, we can scale their impact and solve a lot of problems along the way, whether it's problems with equity or climate change or both, or, so many different things kind of go into this industry that's part of one of the reasons, besides being a food geek and a business lover, one of the reasons I'm in this industry is because there's just such big potential impact.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's what we based our business on, is, the ability to connect people together. And it's true, the rising tide lifts all boats. So anytime that we can, support each other and support brands that are doing good things to make a better impact on the planet, I mean, we got to leverage that.
Absolutely. So for those that are interested in your community, as we kind of wrap up this conversation, do you have like any really fun case studies or examples of success of how you've helped some of the people in your network grow?
Yeah, so we've done some fun stuff. So one of our clients, probably the one that was kind of like the biggest thing, is that we had recommended a resource for her that ended up resulting in like getting listed on Oprah's favorite things.
Oh,
And
nice.
so
That's
that
cool.
was very exciting. And then actually, we just wrapped up a website relaunch for one of our clients, where, results TBD. Hopefully, we'll have some great results from that. But yeah, I was a little hesitant to get back into the web design game, because that wasn't really my intention.
Full circle, yeah.
Yeah, but the site really needed updating, and it's like, if you're going to be, making this marketing effort to get people to your site, then you really have to make it user friendly and ready to go. So that was really a fun project. One client we had has published a cookbook. And so we actually helped name the cookbook and come up with the method that was presented in the book, and then also helped kind of get her on the bestseller list on Amazon. So totally random, but it was a cool project. And
so I assume you were successful in that endeavor then, getting her on the bestseller list?
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
So did you learn some tips or secrets that you can share? Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs write books, whether it's a cookbook or something else. And I know Amazon is becoming one of those places where you kind of have to put your book. But are there any hot tips or tricks you would give for authors trying to like get their new book out into the world through Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, I'm by no means an expert, but I think, we just kind of dove into what some of the best practices are there. And a lot of times in the beginning, when you first put your book out, you want to pick categories that it will stand out. So if you just pick, like, I don't remember what all the categories are. There's probably almost 100 different categories maybe on Amazon. So if you just pick gluten-free or something, you may only get a certain amount of leverage out of it. But if you pick something like that's a little bit more obscure, then, obviously it's related to the book, but just not something that's, as competitive, then that's really helpful, I think, on Amazon. And then also kind of releasing the Kindle version at a different time as the hardcover kind of helps with that as well.
Oh, interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that, but that makes actually, why does that help? I was going to say that makes sense, but I'm not sure if I know why that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's I think the way that they do it is that there's like a time period in the beginning when the book is first out. So it's, I think, maybe, I don't know, 30 days or something where it's a new bestseller. And then if you launch with Kindle separately later, then it gets put into that category as a new bestseller
Okay,
again. So yeah,
that's cool.
better reach for a separate post.
Because extending that kind of bestseller tag, that's really cool. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's so many tips and tricks for every different platform that it's hard to really know what to do when you're kind of
Mhm.
launching in a new space. Like one friend in the CPG world, when she was working in marketing with a kombucha company that was launching their kombucha kit, like make it yourself at home, she reached out to people in the industry and said, "Hey, if you want to try this product that we're launching, I'll reimburse you or whatever for your purchase. Just go ahead and purchase it. And all we ask is like give us an honest review at the end."
Mhm.
And there's like little tricks like that that I think people do to try to get more interaction on their product early on, and of
Mhm.
course generate some reviews, which then helps it show up in more searches and so on and so forth. But there's just so
Yeah.
many different strategies that I feel like they're for every different category. There could probably be like an Amazon class or something. And in fact, maybe that's something we should do on on Evolve CPG, is find someone who's really good at Amazon and get them to do a class or something.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely am not an expert there, but it's just a matter of like taking the time to dig into the best practices sometimes and, look at what it takes there. But anytime you can shortcut that by finding somebody that's been there before, then for sure do it.
Great. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing some of those examples. Maybe to wrap up, what does the future look like for brand pollinators?
That's a good question. I mean, as you know, my path has been pretty meandering this far, but I feel very connected to what we've been building with brand pollinators. And like you said, it's a lot of pieces that have come together to just sort of all converge at something that I think is a really long term goal for me, and uses a lot of the things that I've built throughout my career or multiple careers. So yeah, continuing with brand pollinators to build that community and just connecting with more founders. And we've been doing a lot of like B2B connections lately, so introducing people to others that they can do collaborations with or get on podcasts or that kind of thing. So just sort of continuing to provide support for people. We would like to do some in-person events, so keep an eye out for those, because I think that everybody's really craving that now that we had a taste of what it's like to not have those. And I know I saw you at Expo. It was just so fun to like be in person with people, and so I think that that'll be a big part of what we're doing going forward too.
Nice. Yeah. Let me know when you do that, because I think everyone that I keep talking to in the Evolve CPG community keeps saying, let's do some in person events. But right now we're pretty scattered, like the
Hmm.
across the country slash world. So like, I don't know if I would know which city to pick to do an event in. So I just keep thinking like maybe we just partner with groups like Brand Pollinators or
Hmm.
Naturally Network or Startup CPG or something, and just kind of do joint events. And then that way it's
Yeah.
like some of our community can come, their community can come, and we're just doing more together. So let
Yeah,
me
for
know when
sure.
you
Well, we've got you covered
think about
in
something to do.
SoCal.
Yeah, perfect. Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks for carving out some time to share more about your background and what you're up to. And I appreciate everything you're doing, trying to help the purpose driven brands grow with clarity, I believe is the way you say it, which I'm a big fan of, because I feel like if you're not clear about what your product is, who it's for, what problems it's solving, like, why would anyone buy it, right? So I think moving forward with clarity is something we need to get everyone to be doing. So I appreciate that work. Thanks for doing what you do, and thanks for carving out some time to chat with us.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Cheers. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Kate or Brand Pollinators, go to brandpollinators.com. Subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel for more innovator interviews, expert advice, and leadership discussions. If you like this episode, leave a heart, thumbs up, or review, and share it with your colleagues. As an ever-evolving show, we also love feedback, so send us your thoughts or ideas for who we should talk to next to evolve@modernspecies.com.